I'm like, I don't know what the hell you all are doing over here. Leave me, never talk to me again. Talk to me when you make me more, when you give me another, when you increase my dividend or something. I don't know. Yeah, I just most of my stock money goes into, yeah, never speak to me again. Most of my stock money goes into like high cap mutual funds, ETFs that have a good exposure to like many markets. So I don't really like keep up with
Puppy.
Yeah. Hi. Pup. Well, you seeing the neighbors play outside on this warm spring day? You can see the neighbors through the blinds. The neighbors' kids are all like having a blast on their bicycles out on the tarmac. Oh, sorry. I didn't see you there. If you're enjoying the content, hit the subscribe button. If you don't, it'll make Boo very...
Well, howdy there, Internet people. It's Bo again. So today we will talk about a proposed law in Texas. We will talk about likelihoods if it becomes law. And then we will talk about the law of unintended consequences that will quickly follow some of those options. I think it's Senate Bill 1515, and it has definitely sparked some conversation. If it becomes law, it will basically mandate that a copy of the Ten Commandments is in pretty much every classroom. Under a normal Supreme Court, it would be a certainty that this would be struck down. Okay? Under any normal Supreme Court, that's what would happen. If it became law, if this was passed, the Supreme Court would just be like, no, stop, bad Texas. The fact that the first commandment, you can't have any gods before me, that thing, that definitely runs afoul of the whole, exercise and establishment thing. But given the fact that we have people sitting on the Supreme Court who could not explain the First Amendment during their confirmation hearings, we don't have a normal Supreme Court. So there is an outside chance that this stands in some fashion. If that occurs, the law of unintended consequences comes into play. Because rest assured, no matter how the Supreme Court interprets it, it will not only allow the Ten Commandments. If this happens, right next to the Ten Commandments will be maybe something about the pillars of faith from Islam. There will be Satanist rules. There will be all kinds of things. There is no way that it will stand just allowing the Ten Commandments and only the Ten Commandments. That's not going to be a thing. Even with this Supreme Court, that's just ridiculously unlikely. I would almost say impossible. So, given the fact that the people in Texas, the legislature there, they have to know this. This isn't a new idea. Why are they putting it forward? You have two options. One is that secretly they want, satanic literature in a classroom. That's one option. The other option is that they know it won't stand, and they're just doing something to manipulate their base who they think are stupid. Those are the options. Again, you have a Republican-dominated legislature looking at their constituents and saying, you don't understand the Constitution, you'll fall for this. You don't have any understanding of civics. You are ignorant, and we own you. we can do anything and say anything and you'll fall for it. It's one of those two. I can't think of another option. I don't believe that a majority of the people in the legislature there in Texas actually think this would stand. It's just a move to motivate a base that they think is too ignorant to see through it. You know, there's actually a part of me that's like, you know what? Do it. Let's go ahead and just wallpaper, you know, one side of every classroom with all kinds of guidelines from different religions. Let's see how it plays out. I don't think the Supreme Court is actually going to do that. I think in all likelihood this will be struck down, even under this Supreme Court. Because it is this Supreme Court, you do have to entertain the other options, but I don't see this actually going anywhere. So your most likely answer as to the motivation behind it, it's just to trick, you know, the ignorant people of Texas that don't know no better. That's what the legislature there is trying to do. Anyway, it's just a thought. Y'all have a good day.
It's not wrong to use the term like people who menstruate or birthing persons. It's simply not. No matter what you want to think about it, you can not like it, and that's okay. All right. And also using the term birthing persons is also okay. You know, but like maybe we can come to some understanding sometime. But like broadening it out, and then especially trying to like scoop up like other like trans men and other trans people into it to try to make like more arguments and then answering questions with questions and this type of thing, I just don't think it's like the most effective way to deal with this. And then people get the wrong idea, and then like everybody gets defensive and everybody's making insults, and then now it's like a huge issue. It just doesn't. I think she handled this poorly. Take a look at this. This is interesting. Okay, so I think this is the first thing that this is the first. Did this start? Can anybody know? Did this start on Twitter when she just made this? Or did it start somewhere on TYT? And I just missed it. I don't really watch TYT. Start on Twitter? Pretty sure. Okay, I had a feeling that it did. With the original meme. Okay. Brought it up out of nowhere? I don't know, I think maybe she was in like a conversation with somebody or something, but this is the first time I saw anything about it. So we'll start here. I'm a woman. Please don't refer to me as a person with a uterus, birthing person, or the person who menstruates. How do people not realize how degrading this is? You can support the transgender community without doing this. So my response to this was, it's fine to not want to be called something, but it's a strange take because those terms are used when distinction is important. It's like being upset about being referred to as a female in similar contexts, but it seems like you're fine with that. And then I was able to find her referring to herself as a female here with her own account on Reddit 10 years ago. I am the female co-host of the Young Turks. And so I was like, right? Let me know if I'm off the mark here. But like XX chromosome, uterus haver, person who can give birth, birthing person, whatever. All of these things are just like kind of, all of these things are kind of shorthand for like female, but we don't want to call like everybody who, and there may be some people who have uteruses, but may not be.
So that's kind of like the birthing person thing. Like what he's talking about here is the white woman on the Young Turks, Anna Kasparian, is kind of like going through her I left the left arc on some dumb shit, and like we had like the whole birthing person thing like was originally created like by doctors trying to figure out how to like, you know, not misgender their patients in a way that but when reality, like, this is like shit that was like a problem like ages ago, and what probably happened with Anna Kasparian is she just went to a doctor's office and someone had that on a form and she had a fucking conniption. Like, in reality, like, the best way to sort of, like, you know, ask those, like, gender neutral questions in a way that, so you get the information you need for, like, medical reasons, because people who are assigned male at birth or assigned female at birth, even if they've completely transitioned and been on hormone replacement therapy for a decade plus at this point, like, there's still some issues, you know, by virtue of that you gotta, like, get checked for, you know what I mean? Like, so regardless, it kind of comes to, like, the three questions a doctors could put on a form is, were you assigned male at birth, or were you assigned female at birth? And another box saying, are you intersex, with a checkbox for and you check it if you are, and then you ask pronouns or whatever, just so the doctor can communicate with you in a way that is more comfortable for you. And it's all about like making it so, like, doctors can, like, add better services, because, like, in like you gotta remember, like, doctors' offices, like, private practices and stuff, like, they're businesses. They want people to give them their business, so, like, they want their customers to at least have an okay experience. And all of this is with the Anna Kasparian stuff really just stems from, like, her just kind of being fucking uppity. Like, she has a lot of shit takes around, like, crimes and cops as well, because she's fucking rich and lives in LA, you know, so it's not really super surprising.
Female the way that we may imagine, due to, like, there being intersex people, and especially if you want to be inclusive to those people as well. And it seemed like she's fine calling herself that, right? And so I thought it was just kind of weird how this would come up, because have you ever just heard people talking about just females or referring to, like, a single person, and then calling them a birthing person or anything like that? Typically, when I ever hear that being used, it's specifically for when we're trying to talk about multiple types of people who identify multiple different ways without like keeping one person out or another person out based on, like, their identity. Like, there have been cases of, like, men who we would describe as men, people who have fathered children and produce the spermies, who have uteruses. This is just true, okay? Or at least were born with uteruses. This is just simply true. I don't know what to tell you. And I can't call that person necessarily a female, but he did have a uterus, so it makes sense there. Or for other cases. I mean, it's just weird to have this type of take. And then this obviously got swarmed by a bunch of conservatives who were like, yeah, let's go.
Yep, because
Carrie Lake, like, broken clock. I think you're an embarrassment to this country and a full-blown lunatic. That's a good response, at least. I am also a woman. Proud of it. And
wasn't Carrie Lake the woman who, like, openly said she would fuck Donald Trump, like, in front of her husband? That was her, right? Or am I thinking of... No, Kellyanne Conway's in the shit. That was Carrie Lake. Carrie Lake was that person.
Fight for us every day, but not everyone who deals with reproductive issues is a woman. Liz, I have zero problem with the inclusion. None. Okay. Why? But there's got to be a better way than boiling it down to a body part. No. In her mind, what is female referred to? Because if we're talking about, like, biological processes and somebody calls, like, her a female, I don't think that she would get up in arms about it when they're just doing, like, when they're just talking about, like, her ovary, like, her potential of having, like, ovaries or a uterus or the ability to give birth. Also, how is, like, birthing person isn't just, like, talking about a body part, so boiling it down to a body part, no? Especially in the context of having reproductive rights taken away from people who just see women as baby-making vessels. This is, I mean, like, this person's got a point. It's just like how the language has to be used in this context. The intention intention is that a person is seen foremost as a person, and secondly as their trait. Just How do you find a physical trait without misgendering someone? Did she reply to this? No. I wish she did. That's actually a really good question. Definitely a really good question. Could you bring me that video of her talking about this issue? Because I saw it, but I didn't interact with it. I didn't interact with like any of this stuff while I was there. Mike Figueroa chimes in. I respect you a lot, but this notion that is merely But this notion that the mere existence of trans-inclusive terms, rarely used in casual convos, somehow degrades women, comes right out of the right's anti-right war on women playbook.
True!
Hey, Mike, you're a guy who has no clue what it's like to have your reproductive freedom taken away, but...
What does that have to do with his fucking point?
I don't know if she wants to pull this card. Mike's gay. Like, he may not have, like... He may not have the,
I didn't know
the
Mike
experience of specifically having, I guess, reproductive rights in the context of, I'm sorry to say it, having a uterus. But there are states that still have like the banning of gay sex on their books. One of the biggest states in the country, Texas being one of them. How are you gonna? How can? I don't know if you can pull this card on him. If I'm gonna be completely honest with you, forced birth can ruin your life and kill you. That's true. I'm more talking about the idea of like your reproductive rights being hampered by the state, like the overarching idea of your reproductive rights being taken from you from the state.
He'll kill Moke.
Than the necessary severity of those things. But let's finish her comment, and then we can talk about it. But consider what it's like to have the same lawmakers who fail to protect our rights turn around and call us people with uteruses. It is not inclusive if cis women hate it. It's not inclusive if you don't like it. I don't think that's true. You could just not like it. Once again, like, I'm fine not, when speaking to her, not to, I don't know. Does she have like a, did she ever come up with an idea for this? Did she ever come up with like a solution to this herself that she proposed, or is she just like shooting down all of them and she didn't propose anything herself? Anyone know? So now, because lawmakers have failed to protect your rights, you repeat the same talking points. I say what I say as an independent person. I care what the left thinks.
She is a leftist.
How many people are referring to you using this language? It must be a lot for you to air your grievances like this. I don't think this is the correct way to take this conversation. I just not to say this. Not. I don't think it's bad. I just think it's like a poor direction to get a good answer out of her. I don't think you're gonna get a good answer there like that. Or a cisgender birthing person with white cisgender privilege, and a man can be a woman if he wants to, simply by thinking about it. These are your rules. You must now live with them, birthing person. Oh no, the hate. Even Ollie London came in here. Michael Tracy came in here. Holy shit! It's the whole conservative clown car that just rolled up for this
Jesus
one.
Christ.
They started jumping out, one after the other. You're like, how'd they fit that many in here? How'd they get here so fast? They're just waiting around the corner. Hate to see it. Is there millions of people who can give birth in America? All right then. Here, let's see. Wait, when was this? This is March 22nd. It's almost been a whole month. Let's scroll down to, we find March 22nd when she's talking. Thankfully, she doesn't use her Twitter too much. But let's see. Here we go. Let's see how this transpired on the Bird app. I know how people are still watching Cenk and Anna in 2023, YouTube, Facebook, and nice one. What do Triggerpod, J.K. Rowling, Uyghur Kasparian all have in common? They all shove the success in people's faces when they get criticized. Thank you. You've been a huge part of everything we achieved. More than pissing off with our success. He has my number. My favorite are these bitch moves where people ask others to correct us. Are you complaining to my manager, Karen? I got news for you. I am the manager. Hi, Anna. What do you say to AOC who say instead of people who menstruate, when you're talking about people who menstruate and trans inclusive and doesn't offend? Wait. Like a stroke. Hey Anna, what do you want AOC to say instead of people who menstruate? Yeah, also, I don't think menstruate is a body part, but when you're talking about people who menstruate that are trans inclusive and doesn't offend you as a woman, you said there must be a better way. What do you? Oh, great. Can I ask a question in good faith? Why? I was hoping that this would just be a. Sure, here's my idea. Oh no, it's the answering the question with a question. We're not gonna get an answer, are we, boys? Can I ask a question in good faith? If being referred to as a biological woman in the context of healthcare is offensive to a trans man, what is this language? Biological woman? Why is it that it's somehow less offensive to refer to them as them by mentioning body parts that belong to biological women? How is person with uterus better? Because they're not women? I mean, that's the simple answer. It's also the correct one, because they're not women. So referring to them as a woman is incorrect and rude. But you do have a uterus, so that's what you all have in common, and that's what binds that. And so in this context, that's what the group of people. That's what we would point to talk about people who exist with this phenomenon. I don't know. This seems. Chad, do I have any women here? Am I off base here? It seems that's how I would answer the question. It seemed like a fine answer to the question, because they're not women. That's why it'd be they're simply not. Unless you're just transphobic, then I guess you would say they are, and so that should be fine then. But like, and wait, to refer to them by a body part. No, all right. You made transphobic outbursts, and we spent an hour on our show defending you from. Oh no, what happened now? What is this? Ah, here we go. The internet is filled with hating-ass people who have to convince me otherwise. Oh, Olemi? This is one of the people from Leftist Mafia. Okay, thank you. Do you mean people who demand people cook their friends? Those kind of haters? Question mark. Response.
And you should be able to mention those without like having to classify it as, but you shouldn't get mad at her for this because of her history. No, I mean, no one's mad at her for her history.
I think it makes sense if you want her to change her mind and to understand what she did wrong. Because if it's just, if without that context, like, again, that's why it's important if you know her that you do include that context. Because she has to understand these disagreements are coming from an honest place, and we're not just doing it for clicks, right? Like that's so.
No, of course. But that's not the same. That's not the same, though. That's not the same.
I have to say it. Oh my god, I have to say it. I like Anna, but I feel a little bit like this is the coddle the white lady hour.
Damn.
Damn right.
No, dude. No, not the white women.
And you know why? And you know why? I thought this even earlier, because before this, the Majority Report put out a thing too, and everybody else, and I was like, boy, everybody sure feels the need to flip over their fucking sheets to come out to defend her for getting cooked, when all of the people get cooked all the time. I have yet to watch a video of anybody defending me from getting fucking cooked. I've never seen it. I've never seen everybody come out. She has a lot of fucking bad takes, and then she gets cooked because she comes out unprovoked. She asks to be cooked. She got up today and she said, Twitter, cook me.
Right. Listen,
He has yet to delete the tweet. I want to make it clear. He has yet to delete the fucking tweet.
Look, good morning, Dr. Goblin. I mean, I'm not gonna. Okay, here. I do think Anna has like, a bevy, of bad takes under the surface. Poor people is one of them. Some takes on homelessness, crime. Those are issues. Criminal justice isn't like, those aren't the best. The Young Turks have, like, as far as I remember, haven't been the best on those issues. Yeah, and Anna's like, for me, a driving force from what I've seen. A lot of the times when I hear her talk, there are things that I find things from mildly to quite disagreeable. We talked about it when I think, was she talking to Ben Shapiro? I forget. on that like debate, like conversation, whatever thing that she had, right? And so I think people just straight up. It's just, again, this is difficult. I wouldn't say, from what I've seen so far, I wouldn't say that she's just straight up transphobic. I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't be able to co-sign that while feeling.
Yeah, baby, that's what I've been waiting for.
That's his video.
Thank you for the raid.
I was wondering where fucking Moist Critical is coming from.
I can't call it just straight up transphobic. I wouldn't be able to co-sign that from what I've seen so far. I think it's like some problematic takes that definitely need to be like introspected on, and I'd love for her to like change her opinion. But I wouldn't say it's necessarily transphobic. I didn't see the Majority Report's video that they released on it, so I don't know if what they were saying is I don't know if what they were saying was Anna so based in red pilled, or if it's just like, hey, Anna actually isn't transphobic even if you just disagree with her on this. Oh, did they change the title from this for this? Oh, I think they did. I think they changed it from Anna Kasparian is not transphobic to is Anna Kasparian anti-trans.
RIMs are broken. I don't know what's going on, but they froze basically at the start of the show. And then they aren't coming back, and I tried to refresh, then I lost all of them. But I did see an IM that I just wanted to respond to really quickly because I didn't want, like, they actually are broken, but I felt like people might be like, you're dodging this. I'm not. So I saw that my dear friend Anna Kasparian kind of went viral with a tweet, and some people wanted me to weigh in on it. And I just, like, look, she, as I said, dear friend of mine, really good person. I don't think she's anti-trans. I don't think that's really a question. She has a long track record in this space, and I think her track record should speak for itself. She's been in this space for a long period of time.
Old clip, yes. We're moving in chronological order. So we start with the old stuff, and then, maybe blow your mind. Then we'll listen to the new stuff. In that order.
And has done a ton of great work. However, like, I really do disagree with the emphasis. Like, I think it's wrong to overinflate the usage of kind of awkward language like birthing person, both in frequency and in terms of the stakes involved when someone is referred to by that language, because it's awkward. I get it. It's stilted when being used in non-medical or technical
I have the clips. Thank you.
Terms, but I think that's like kind of the extent of the critique, right? It's awkward. It doesn't take away anyone's rights, and it's not in when being used right now in that context, it's not taking away anyone's rights. And like, as a cis woman myself, I just think it's more important to put into context that, like, while you might not enjoy the technical language, that awkwardness is inevitable in this current climate and necessary, because we're trying to, like, fortify walls right now as trans erasure is widespread right now. Like, there's a barrage of deliberately trans exclusionary language, which is what some of the awkward, stilted terminology is meaning to beat back. And that trans exclusionary language is really just the tip of the iceberg for systemic erasure. So being diligent about combating that, I mean, that's at the forefront of my mind. So, like, again, I've tried to say this before. From my point of view, so much of what we do in this business, a very small business, and I will reiterate that, like, Anna, in my opinion, is one of the very few good ones. But we have a disagreement here. Like,
one of the very few good ones? What, white women? Oh no. Everything
I think she meant leftist,
said by
but
Emma
I see
Vigeland
the
is
point.
Emma Vigeland's own opinion.
It just, so much of what we do isn't just how we cover something, it's what we cover, it's story selection, it's what we emphasize, and anyone in private has the right to have preferences about how they want to be identified. But in my position, member of the media, member of the left, the progressive left, being kind of spokespeople for the progressive left in an online media space, I just think we have a greater responsibility. And the assertion that someone wants to just be called a woman in, like, an individualized, atomized context is completely fair. But within the context of larger anti-trans panic and hundreds of bills on the state level targeting trans people, like, I try to bring a certain amount of awareness about how my statements are going to be taken, and I think it's obtuse to skirt around the context, right? So
that's actually a really good take. It is true, and we talk about this a lot. When you become, like, a media figure, when you become, like, a public person, especially if you're a public person specifically who's an advocate for certain political takes, there's some things you got to put on, like, the back burner a little bit when it comes to those types of things. I don't like talking about, like, a lot of black issues, if I'm going to be honest with you. They make me uncomfortable a decent amount, or like things that I'm pretty close to. A lot of those streams, you may notice that we only cover, like, a couple big things, and then we move on to, like, gaming, or I like raid out and we end the stream or something. so I don't like, so we don't have to like always like sit on it super hard for as long, like longer than need be. Right? But like, I mean, I gave up that like comfort when I became like a vocal advocate for like human rights. You know what I mean? You can always have any, you know, you can always have like your cake and eat it too. Like I said, there's no problem with wanting to be called something specifically, especially like in private, but it seems quite weird to like hyper focus and then like, and even possibly like arguably irresponsible to then like go on about this in public as we're going through like a massive trans panic, trans erasure, trans eradication that some conservatives would love to begin their final crusade on. So I mean, I just think that's, you know, I think Emma Vigeland, true and real and factual and correct. And it just doesn't, it also just doesn't really make, I just don't think it makes too much sense, but you know, as it is. Back to this, Ole then responded and said, "You made transphobic statements and spent an hour on the show defending, and we spent an hour on the show defending you from the allegations of being a TERF rather than addressing the substantive problems with your comment." That is important context. I'm not sure how true that is. I didn't watch it, but I do know that is, but if that's true, that's important context. For like, at the end of the discussion, after they spent like the entire show being like, "I know Anna's so cool, I promise. If you're a trans person and you saw Anna on the street, she would not shoot you. Guys, please, if Anna saw you on the street, she would not call you a slur if you were trans, please. I promise you. If you were a trans woman and Anna saw you in the, I know Anna, I was on a Discord call with her. If Anna saw a trans person walk into the women's restroom, she would not beat you with her purse and then call the police. I promise, guys. Please don't say this. Please, please. Like, if you spent if that was like the entire hour, and then she's like, but at the end of the day, they're like, yeah, but she made a really bad tweet, and it is transphobic, right? As like the synopsis of what Ole is saying here. I don't think that's. I think it's a bit disingenuous to just take this part out, right? I said it felt like we were coddling you. I stand by that. If you think that makes me a hater, knock yourself out, Miss Ma'ams. Damn, not the Miss Ma'am. Oh, jeez. Lol. You know this is. Yeah, there's never a response in these type of situations that starts with lol, lamau, okay. All of those things. It's all, you know, it's all falling apart. Lol, the meltdowns. Oh no, over wanting to be referred to as a woman rather than as birthing person.
Damn, I didn't think you reached that.
I'll never apologize for that, especially as a biological woman. Why does she keep using this term? What does this term mean to her? Does she? I don't know. Does anybody know how good is like? I'm starting to. This is curious because I don't keep up with TYT. I'm starting to be. How is like TYT on trans issues? Because her like continued usage of this term is like is peculiar to me. I have only heard this term ever in my life from like TERFs, and I don't know what she necessarily means by it. And if so, what's the difference between sex and gender? I'm not sure if she talked about this a year ago. I have the clip. Thank you. Women, biological.
The Lord of Blood is not immune to bloodlust.
Lifetime
I still can't
of
believe
being
that
told
shit.
I'm less than. I'm a woman, no apologies. Has anyone called you a birthing person? Anyone at all? Yes, Tyler, I live in California. These issues are not whether you want to be called a woman or not. Is the opposing the entire usage of birthing person. Yeah, I do. Listen, here. Let me see if I can make like Anna's argument better, okay? I'm pretending to be Anna, okay? I'm going to put on my white woman costume. I'm now pretending to be Anna Kasparian, female co-host to TYT. I understand the importance, utility, and usage of terms like birthing person and people with uteruses and people who menstruate. With that being said, I have to be honest. In private context or outside of these types of political discussions, I find it uncomfortable to be boiled down to those characteristics. It's reminiscent of conservatives who think of us only as, quote, holes, end quote, or quote, walking incubators, end quote. And in those contexts, it personally makes me uncomfortable, and I would prefer if you would not refer to me in that way. Furthermore, with that being said, there is no broader political context to this. It is my personal opinion that personally makes me feel a certain way. And yeah, well, and I guess you just end it there. There you go. As I think that's a statement that would have just like gone perfectly fine, honestly.
Thrice.
Or in these situations, may you please, can I ask, you say women and people who can give birth, or women and people who can menstruate. Thank you very much. I think that would have gone perfectly fine, and people would have been, there may be like a little buzz, but like I really feel like that like covers like most contexts, and then people would be like, and then it wouldn't have gotten like this. I feel like here's my problem, okay? When I feel like we should stop thinking that much. If I'm going to be completely honest with you, we haven't gone, I don't think I've like made a segment on this or anything yet, and I'm not sure if I can necessarily maybe tie into something bigger. I feel like way too often we try to justify our own personal wants and wishes. We try to justify our own personal things that we like, things that we don't like, things that we're offended by, things that we're not, you know, with some sort of like argument.
Send me the TikTok.
Or like
you're right. You're right. I probably should. Hold on, Dust. I should probably say. Thank you for reminding me to do TikTok. I haven't. Dumbass. It needs. It's. I think I could have sworn you're already a mod. Is that a birthing person with you? Like, no, that's exactly it, Uriah. Like the problem here is that like the stuff that's being discussed here was like talked about in these my next kind of circles, like advocacy circles, years ago. This was like 3, 4, 5 years, 6 years ago. People were talking about this stuff, and the reason why we're hearing about it now is because probably Annika Spirit probably went to the doctor. You know, they probably either saw an old forum post or went to or they updated it and just never changed their things, and she got fucking triggered. Like most people use AFAB or AMAB, assigned female at birth, assigned male at birth, and then have the context of asking are you intersex and asking you your pronouns, and then there's all the fucking context you need. All of this extra shit is just pedantic bullshit that, you know, was you know, she just like, she's a fucking lip. Like, it's whatever. Yeah, maybe let me go live real quick on here, and let's see. I exist. Choose gaming. Other games. Moderators. Okay, you're not. I'll send you the TikTok link and alright, give me 1 second. I'm going to, while this is getting sorted, I hope it didn't shoot up and get really loud again. Give me 1 second. I have to now, it's now storming here, so I have to go close all my windows because it's going to start fucking raining and my entire apartment's going to be loud as shit. I am so sorry for the delay. Yeah, give me a second. Levels. Why? So for some reason, whenever I open the TikTok live studio thing, it makes my microphone volume go through the goddamn roof, and I don't know why. It's pretty stupid. I'm just cracking the windows because it's going to turn into a bazillion degrees in here if I don't do it. At least have it cracked at least a little bit. Anywho, we're here. Let's continue. Chara, let me give you my TikTok link. My TikTok link, just make it easier on you. Profile. Here, you should be able to get the live this way. There you go. All right. Sorry for that, everybody. We're back. We're back. All right, cool. We are here. We're here. Great.
Fucking like get down to the axioms of why I don't like ketchup on my hot dog, you know, and like sometimes you don't like ketchup on your hot dog because you are against the usage of land and water in inefficient ways that infringes on nature and deforestation. Sometimes and all those things, and then make it into like a huge argument. Sometimes you don't like ketchup on your hot dog simply
say something in chat when you get on there. Dust, I'll add you as a mod.
And it's not really deeper than that. It just you take a bite of the hot dog and you're like, I wish this didn't have ketchup on it. I don't think you can really rationalize and make like a big argument of in like some like weirdo theory bro, debate bro bullshit like way when on like when it comes to like what you just don't find tasty, what you do and just don't find tasty. So like I feel like a lot of people simply just try to make themselves feel better in these types of situations, or feel more right, or make their personal opinions and feelings about things feel more valid by coming up with an argument about it, and then people can poke holes in it, and then you poke holes in it, and then you feel like you need to defend it more, then you like build up more walls, and then it's just like a big mess when you could just be like, yeah, I don't like it. Make me feel bad. It go boo boo ouchie on my feels. And you know what? It's okay if something puts a boo boo ouchie on your feelings. I don't think that's necessarily invalid. I think if something really makes somebody upset, I don't think we really need a better reason not really to say it, unless there's like an even more overarching reason why it happens, and then we can work out
what's going on,
like, and then we can work something out, or we can come to an understanding. Like, and not every situation is something wrong. You didn't necessarily do something wrong, you know what I mean? Like, something wrong, just because we have disagreements and we don't agree doesn't mean anybody necessarily did anything wrong. It's not wrong to use the term like people who menstruate or birthing.
All right, I'm kind of over this.
It's simply not. No matter what you want to think about it, you can.
There you go. You are now mod. You're now mod, Jaro. Let's say what? What should I throw on next? Throwing a bit.
Well, howdy there, Internet people. It's Bo again. So today we're going to talk a little foreign policy again. Semi-recently, we'd been discussing the developing near-peer contest that is emerging between the United States and China. Since then, a lot of people have been asking, how does that end? You know, we can see that it's starting. It's not starting. It has started. So people are wondering what happens next. What is the overall strategy? How do near-peer contests tend to resolve themselves? There are two main strategies, two main methods of conclusion, and the easiest way to sum it up is fall in line or fall apart. Under the fall in line strategy, the United States would look to China and try to encourage it to accept second place. That's really what it boils down to. It would use a lot of diplomacy, economic might, soft power to contain China and keep it out of things that are historically U.S. spheres of influence.
Don't you know it, Blue? I've had a rough week too.
If you're looking for a historical example, think containment, domino theory from the First Cold War. The idea then was to keep the Soviets out of other countries. It's the same thing. They would want to keep Chinese influence out of other countries. The other method, so that's fall in line. Fall apart is when the United States decides, hey, China is not going to accept second place. They're not going to fall into the traditional U.S.-led international order, so we got to break them. And this is where the U.S. takes all of its might, all of its diplomatic power, economic power, soft power, and tries to box China in tightly rather than loosely, and keep it boxed in until internal pressures fracture it. Things going on inside the country lead the regime to fall apart. Think the end of the First Cold War. That's what that looks like. When you listen to foreign policy pundits in the United States, they talk about this. However, something that I've noticed is that they presuppose a U.S. win because the United States has been the dominant power in the world since the end of World War II. They're not, they don't really seem to be entertaining the Chinese response. U.S. foreign policy does not occur in a vacuum. Every move will have a counter move. Remember, poker game, international poker game, everybody's cheating. The Chinese government isn't going to sit there and just allow the United States to do these, to engage in this behavior. They're going to respond. And that's one of the more concerning things about it. Because when you're talking about the fall in line aspect, because of the previous administration withdrawing on our allies, we don't really have the best standing. So the U.S. saying, oh, don't side with the Chinese, don't worry, we'll protect you, that track record's shot.
All right,
the
let's start a new
Chinese
game.
will be able to successfully counter that. And then when it comes to the fall apart scenario, which country's on better footing domestically? It's not the United States. China doesn't have an opposition party that is questioning the very system of governance. That's not a thing. The Republican Party in the United States is obviously questioning the validity of democracy itself in a lot of ways. But aside from that, if they were to obtain power, at least the America First Trumpism side of things, they want to withdraw. They don't want to be the international leader anymore. They don't want to be on the foreign policy stage. It's America first. In a weird way that, I don't want to say makes them allies, because that makes it sound like there's some kind of collusion, and I have no evidence to suggest that. But the interests of the Republican Party and the American first ideology aligns with Chinese foreign policy. They mesh very well together. The U.S. doesn't have an advantage like that when it comes to dealing with China. The pundits that you hear discussing this, they seem to forget that the United States had a really bad few years. And that bad few years really manifested itself overseas. We sold out a lot of allies. We didn't keep a lot of promises. We pulled out of a lot of treaties. it's going to take a long time to regain the world's trust there. And then when it comes to the fall apart aspect, it's not China who has the internal divisions that can be easily exploited. It's the United States. The idea of presupposing a U.S. win, that's one of those things that could lead to catastrophe. You know, it's easy to make the assumption that we'll win because in near-peer contests, the United States typically does, historically speaking. But you don't win the next contest by preparing for the last and doing the same thing that you did last time, especially when the situations are dramatically different. If the United States is smart, it wouldn't have started this, to be honest. But since it has started, if they're going to play their cards right at that international poker table, the best move is to move very, very slowly, because the United States has a lot of making up to do all over the world. But moving slowly also assumes that the Republican Party won't obtain power anytime soon. Because if the faction of the Republican Party that supports America first, that Trumpist mentality, if it obtains power, especially in the executive branch, the Chinese government is going to have, free reign, because the United States will be
go ahead,
pulling
Blue.
back.
Ask away.
So, to answer the direct questions, it ends with either fall in line or fall apart. If you're listening to a lot of pundits talking about foreign policy today, just understand that it is very noticeable that almost all of them are assuming before the contest, hope it doesn't turn into a conflict, before the contest even gets started, they're assuming a U.S. win. And I don't know that there's grounds to make that assumption. Anyway, it's just a thought. Y'all have a good day.
It's from about a year ago. I don't know. I had reasons. Had reasons, Blue. Let's pull up what Josh Stripe Hayes has going on. Ah, that's a new video. Let's check it out.
What is an MMORPG? That sounds like a pretty simple question. It's an acronym for a genre of games, but what do games within that genre actually have in common which causes them to all be lumped together? What do they all do? What are the design conventions which make up an MMORPG game and make someone go, ah yes, this is undeniably an MMORPG? How can you look at games like Old School RuneScape, EVE Online, Furcadia, and Final Fantasy XIV and say, yes, these clearly all belong to the same genre. Anyone who enjoys one will likely enjoy the others. There are YouTubers and Twitch streamers dedicated to the genre as a whole, or to games within the genre. There are subreddits and forums and news agencies dedicated to the MMORPG, so you'd assume we'd all have a collective, finalized definition for what this genre actually is. But no, while we agree on the broad strokes of design, almost no one agrees on the specifics. But why? What makes this genre so hard to define? Let's discuss. As usual, a massive thank you to all the supporters on Patreon, Twitch, and YouTube who keep this channel alive. More information on how you can support at the end. For now, let's begin. Welcome, I'm Josh Stripe.
Is it just me, or does Josh Stripe Hayes' mic sound a little off? It's not just me, is it?
Hayes. I've been making MMORPG videos on YouTube and playing them on Twitch for several years, from complete playthroughs to comedy reviews to interviews with the people who make these games. Now, I'm far from the only YouTuber working in this space, but the MMORPG genre is still relatively niche within the greater gaming community, so there are far fewer MMO creators than, say, Minecraft or first-person shooter creators. Now, being part of a smaller community...
Wait, you can't hear anything on your end? Hold on. Do I need to add an audio source? Ugh. God damn it. Thank you for telling me that, by the way. I appreciate it. Alright. Cool. Save. Can you hear anything now? Alright, let's...
community, you'd think we'd all be able to agree on what this genre actually is, but even between creators or communities themselves, there is disagreement. Whenever a new game is announced and proclaims itself an MMORPG, you'll have groups of people saying, yes, this is definitely an MMO, while other people say, well, actually, it doesn't meet the criteria to be classed as an MMORPG. But what are those criteria? Why is this so vague? Well, I think I can answer this, and it mostly boils down to how bad the acronym MMORPG is for telling you anything mechanical about the genre itself, or a game described by the acronym. So let's explore acronyms, information density, and societal expectations of games. MMORPG stands for Massively Multiplayer Online Role-Playing Game. The acronym was likely popularized by Richard Garriott, the guy who created the Ultima series of role-playing games and then Ultima Online, one of the first successful online adventure games. It's generally used to describe always online adventure games where players interact in a consistent online world, playing a character and being responsible for making choices which progress the account they are playing. But most...
Alright, that's a lot of different games. Ugh. Can we just say that, like, the definition of an MMO is just a vibe? Because that's all, it's a specific type of vibe of game, because that definition doesn't narrow it down whatsoever.
Most of the information and opinions you have about the genre when you hear the acronym MMORPG will be formed from connected memories or experiences within the games themselves, not this acronym on its own. Because the acronym actually explains very little, and the few things it does explain are vague, and this can get complicated, so we need to look at how we use language to communicate and pass information on. So let's break this down. In maths, there's a thing called set theory. Now don't worry, this isn't a maths lesson and there won't be a test. You just need to understand this basic idea. A set is a collection of things which all belong to that set. So if I say video games as a set, literally every video game ever made would be included in that set. The first Mario game would be there, Doom, The Sims, World of Warcraft, Soul Reaver, FIFA, Dead or Alive Beach Volleyball, the KFC dating simulator. Every video game ever made is in this set. So if you were to say to someone, oh, I love video games, you're effectively saying you love every single game within the set of all games ever, which includes Devil May Cry 2, and this is clearly a lie because nobody loves Devil May Cry 2. So instead of saying you love all video games,
I just want to say for the record that I've never played a Devil May Cry game, but on behalf of my buddies Zara and Anthony, I have to protest because they would get pretty pissy at that. They like, for some reason, all of the Devil May Cry games. God only knows why. I've seen them play Devil May Cry 1, and that is a clunky piece of trash.
you need to add in parameters of the set you're actually talking about, descriptors which narrow down the field and exclude certain games and include others. And the more descriptors you add, the smaller and more specific the set you're talking about becomes. For example, if you say you love first-person games, you've narrowed the set down to only games with a specific camera angle. But even now, the range of games within that set is quite varied. Portal, Doom, Myst, GoldenEye, Castle Master, Morrowind if you only play zoomed in. You've only really defined a camera angle. So you add in more descriptors and narrow down the set even more. You love fast-paced, first-person arena shooters with online or local area network capture the flag modes. Cool, that's a load more parameters. The set you're talking about is now a lot more defined. You could enjoy Unreal Tournament, or Halo, or Doom. Now you could reduce that set even more by adding in even more specific things, but eventually you'll kind of accept that you've reduced it enough and almost all the games within the set you've now got are probably probably going to be something you enjoy. The problem with this is human beings are lazy, and the set of games is huge, and refining them down is quite hard work. So we take general design tropes or common design choices and we create acronyms for them, so we can lump all those design choices into an easy to define set. Instead of saying, oh, I like the design style where the camera is placed where the protagonist's eye would be and then they shoot things, we just say first person shooter, shortened to FPS. Instead of saying, oh, I like strategy games where both me and my opponent construct a base and send units at each other at the same time, we say real-time strategy, shortened to RTS. Some people prefer the real-time aspect to be turn-based, so turn-based RTS is also a thing. Take the refining description of 4-player split-screen couch co-op. You've refined it to a potential amount of players and then added in how you like to play the game, in the same room as other people, likely all using the same console on the same screen. Now here's the issue, and don't worry, we'll be bringing this back round to the MMORPG acronym soon. This is going somewhere, trust me. When you use an acronym or a descriptor to reduce the set of all games to only the set of games you actually like or want to talk about, you want to be as specific as possible. Ideally, you want to increase the density of information contained within an acronym. You want to say a lot of stuff without saying a lot of things, and this is usually done best by excluding or including mechanical or gameplay choices, things which actually matter to the moment-to-moment experience of the game. You don't really want to use superficial or aesthetic descriptions. It's useful to define sets by how they play and not how they look. Because if you did use a superficial parameter to create a set of games, like saying, oh, I like games set in the modern world, you're still grouping together games like FIFA, Broken Sword, The Sims, The Secret World, Call of Duty Modern Warfare, Tekken, and Burnout 3. Yes, you've definitely removed some games with this parameter, but you've not really created a group which shares any gameplay similarities. So if creating aesthetic sets isn't a great way to group together similar playing games, we could instead do it mechanically, with things like camera angles, control schemes, single player or multiplayer. And remember, the more specific information you refine a set by, the more cohesive and similar the set will feel. And then the more likely you are to have a bunch of games within the set that you'll enjoy because they meet most of your criteria. So how does Steam, the online gaming platform, do it? Well, there's a drop-down menu in the Steam store, and the first genre is action, which itself is a massive set, so they refine it further into focused groups within action, like arcade and rhythm, fighting and martial arts, first-person shooter, hack and slash, and more. You can see there's also the role-playing category, but this itself is broken down into action RPG, adventure RPG, JRPG, and more. When you use an acronym or a genre descriptor, what you're trying to do is reduce the set of all video games into a specific set of games, and you're trying to do it as efficiently as possible. So if you say third-person shooter, you still have a lot of games remaining, but if you clarify down to story-driven, cover-based, modern adventure, male protagonist third-person shooter, you're probably talking about Uncharted. So what does all this have to do with MMORPG being a bad acronym for creating a set? Well, let's take the other examples we've used so far and see how effective they are mechanically at creating specific sets. First-person shooter. You have a defined camera angle, first person. This is objective, and then a defined gameplay element, shooting. Now, you could still be on about either Portal or Doom, but we have defined mechanics at least. RTS, real-time strategy. You've got a gameplay mechanic of playing against the other person at the same pace with real time, and then an overall feeling of tactical mastery with strategy. VN, or visual novel. You know you're likely going to get a story-based experience told through static images with text over them, likely with a couple of choices to make along the way focused on the outcome. These acronyms and descriptors are really efficient at making sets of video games because they contain one or more mechanical parameters and one or more gameplay mechanics. It's also super important to understand the order of descriptors actually changes the weighting and importance a person will give them, because games can contain small elements of certain designs without that being the focus of the game. When we, as humans, hear descriptors of anything, we generally give the first piece of information we hear more importance and more weight in the final outcome than the second, third, or fourth piece of information. For example, if I say, I want a driving game with combat, I'm going to be prioritizing the driving element but enjoy the addition of combat. So a game like Burnout 3 would work well. It's a driving game first, but you can crash into people. If I were to say, however, I want a combat game with driving, I'd probably lean more towards something like Twisted Metal, which puts the combat first, you just happen to be in cars. So the order of descriptors or the order of the acronym does play a role in our own understanding of what we're looking to prioritize in a game or a set of games that we create. And now we come to MMORPG. Massively multiplayer online role-playing game. The first M, massively, is our first stumbling block. How massive is massive? Unlike a defined descriptor such as 2-player or 24-person game, massive is vague, and multiplayer simply means more than one. It may not even mean everyone at the same time. Old school RuneScape has servers which can hold 2,000 people total, but they have multiple servers, meaning while everyone is playing the same game, they're not always playing or interacting with everyone else playing the game. The Elder Scrolls Online has its mega server, so while everyone is technically on the same server, provided you're in the same region, you may phase in or out of someone else's game based on server load. Is that multiplayer? Genvenard only has 2 servers, but each has a very limited capacity. Could that be considered massive? Imagine taking just the massively multiplayer bit and trying to make a set of massively multiplayer games from every game ever without a defined number for massively. It basically comes down to personal interpretation. If 20 is massive, then Unreal Tournament gets in. If 100 is massive, then Fortnite gets in. If you start saying massive is a minimum of 5,000 all able to interact at once, then old school RuneScape doesn't get in. It's vague, and a set made with vague parameters will differ from person to person. But how about the online bit? I mean, that's pretty objective. It's either online or it's not. But nowadays, many new PC games or console games have to be online all the time, even if they're single-player experiences. Like StarCraft 2 or Diablo 3, even Mad Max launched requiring a constant internet connection to be played. So the set of games which must be online is strongly defined, yes, but those games may not have any connection to each other. Just because you like one game that's always online doesn't mean you'll like another. And remember, the point of creating sets is to find similar games so you can find things that you enjoy. So what about the final bit of the acronym, the RPG bit? Surely this narrows it down enough to be a cohesive set. Well, again, not really, because the overarching genre descriptor RPG is extremely broad and itself contains many varied games. Roleplay could mean, taken literally, any game where you play a role within a story, such as any of the Grand Theft Autos. But as a gaming collective, we've all come to accept it generally means a game where you have control and input over your avatar's progression and some level of authority over guiding how your character develops, usually making choices which improve or specialize as the game goes on. But even with that more specific focus, Devil May Cry could still be classified as an RPG, along with Dark Souls and Final Fantasy VII, Baldur's Gate, Borderlands, Mass Effect, Hades. And these games are all different camera angles, progression styles, and gameplay styles, and yet all class themselves as RPGs. So we've known for ages that the acronym RPG itself isn't really enough to create a defined set of games with any design through line. This is why Steam has 7 different subcategories for RPG alone. So now we can look at why the acronym MMORPG sucks for creating anything even close to a cohesive set. Massively isn't defined and is open to interpretation. Multiplayer could be anything from 2 to 2 million. Online doesn't tell us anything about the gameplay beyond the networking fact that we need internet, and RPG is itself such a broad acronym, it needs to be refined down multiple times before we even start to see a consistent looking group of games. MMORPG as an acronym tells us nothing about camera angles, mechanics, or aesthetics. It doesn't tell us if the game world is fully open or instance, player versus environment focused or player versus player focused, hack and slash or slow and tactical, sci-fi or fantasy, WASD movement or click and wait, PC, console, or mobile. I mean, Lord of the Rings Online is a third-person WASD movement fantasy tab-target adventure with a consistent open-world landmass. You can literally walk from the Shire to Mordor in the game, remaining in the same overworld, while Albion Online is a top-down click-to-move sandbox crafting PvP game with smaller instanced zones connected via waygates on the edge of each self-contained map. And both of them are MMORPGs, which is a perfect example that when you refine the set of all games into only the set of massively multiplayer online role-playing games, you are still left with a huge variety of games. When taken literally, it does basically mean a game which has multiple people playing together and you as a player have a level of agency over the progression of your account or in-game avatar, which is so broad there's no chance of any level of cohesion between its members. And I know that taking the acronym literally is pedantic, but that's exactly what people who don't have experience with this genre are going to do. And if you don't take it literally, but instead wrap your own interpretation of what MMORPG means to you around the acronym, you're going to run into the obvious issue of how your subjective interpretation of what an MMORPG should or needs to be may not be the same as everyone else's. First person is objective, a camera angle, we cannot deny that. Third person is objective, turn-based is objective, two-player is objective. Massively multiplayer online role-playing game is unfortunately mostly subjective, and therein lies the issue of defining it. This also ties back to the order of acronyms having importance to us as humans. World of Warcraft has been described as an MMORPG, placing emphasis on the multiplayer elements first and the personal RPG adventure second, while Final Fantasy XIV is often described as an RPG MMO, with the personal RPG adventure taking priority. And it also happens to be online with other people. In Nerd Slayer's video, Why Final Fantasy XIV Isn't an MMORPG, It's an MORPG, the exclusion of the first M of the acronym, the massively bit, reframes the game as a smaller scaled multiplayer online role-playing game. Other people just happen to be there, because you simply don't need to interact with everyone. It's never massive by requirement. While Guild Wars 2 describes itself as an MMORPG, Guild Wars 1 refers to itself simply as an online RPG, because while it does have multiplayer elements, you'll only see other players in the central hub zones or your party in the wilds if you invite them with you. So when a game describes itself as an MMORPG, all it's really saying is it fits into a really large set of games that you can play with other people, and there's an element of progression. EVE is an MMORPG, as is Old School RuneScape, as is Final Fantasy XIV, despite the fact they've all got different camera angles and mechanics and aesthetics and gameplay focuses, and unfortunately, what the general gaming public doesn't really understand, and this goes for Steam as well, because Steam only has MMORPG as its own set, the acronym MMORPG, much like the vague descriptors driving game, sports game, shooter game, or the overall term video game itself, needs to be refined a lot more before you can create a set of games with much mechanically in common. So what is an MMORPG? It's a game of almost any mechanical system or artistic style which falls somewhere within this rather ill-defined broad set of networking and progression parameters. And liking a game within this set isn't any indicator at all that you'd like any of the others, because there are so many. So the next time a new game is announced which describes itself as an MMORPG and people scream that's not a real MMORPG, much like the no true Scotsman fallacy, remember that the game might indeed fall within the set of MMORPGs, but it might not be the specific part of that set that those people or you enjoy. And that's fine. But I know that it's not fun to leave a video on a negative note, so we can all just agree that an MMORPG is an online game that has fishing. As always, cheers for watching. Another massive thank you to all the supporters on Patreon, Twitch, and YouTube who keep this channel alive. You can support from only £1 a month. Check the video description for links to the Patreon, Twitch, Twitter, and our Discord. And as always, have a great day.
I will have a great day, Josh Strife Hayes. Ya boy is depressed. Should he play?
Do I play Elder Scrolls Online?
So
you know
hold
what?
on.
I've got a...
So hold on. So I want to give a little bit of context here. So hold on. Hold on. I want to give a little bit of context here. I am a colossal fan of the Elder Scrolls Online. I love it. 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 And I'm afraid I'm going to get my feelings hurt here. So we'll see.
A strange thing about Elder Scrolls Online, and if you've played it before, I think you'll probably agree with this. I love...
Sorry about that, y'all. Sorry about that. Give me 1 second here. All right, we're back. Yeah, sorry about that, y'all. I think I had to switch over to Xfinity Wi-Fi, the general Wi-Fi you get from doing a thing. I basically I heard a transformer break outside. I think either some lightning hit it or like it just overloaded, and now our Wi-Fi's out. So here we are. In the meantime, but we're back. So yeah. Hold on, let me get back. You know what? That might actually be my hint to play something a little differently, something a little more low key. And now Launchbox is fucking crashing because God is dead and it hates me. All right, let's play a little mess. Play some Master Duel, I guess. All right. But like, I gotta be honest. Sometimes I find it hard to play the game. Like, there's times I'll just play it nonstop for like a week, and then I'll barely touch it for like months. It's oh boy.
It's super weird. Like, on paper, it's everything I want in an MMORPG. I look at it and I'm like, that's the correct decision. That's the good decision. That's the right decision. That's the good decision. And then I play it, and after like an hour, I'm like, just gonna go to the gym instead. It's so weird. It's perfect on paper, and it just doesn't work for me as a long-term game. It was really fun. Like, I honestly think it's the combat that really does change it. Yeah, it tries to be both a Bethesda and a...
Yeah, it's the combat. Let's be real. It's the combat in Elder Scrolls Online, I think, is fun, but it feels a little floaty. I mean, all MMO combat feels floaty to me, but like, you know, it doesn't necessarily feel like a Elder Scrolls game in that same way. You know what I mean? But, you know, whatever.
And an MMO, and it's difficult to do that. And yeah, it tries to be both a Bethesda and an MMO, and it's difficult to do that. I think it's a good Bethesda game, but I'm not sure if it's a great MMO.
Yeah, I mean, the base game's writing's a little but I mean, it's fun. It's fun. I like it a lot.
Really weird. I do think it comes down to the combat, and I do think it comes down to... I love the crafting in Elder Scrolls Online. I think the crafting is phenomenal. Yeah, I do believe it very much comes down to the combat. Like, if you change the combat around, it would be great, but they've pretty much invested so much time into this combat as it is now that I don't think they would ever change it. I'm not saying play ESO, but I think everyone should try the Elder Scrolls Online because it makes a lot of good choices. It really does. There's a hell of a lot of good choices in the game, and I think everyone should at least try the Elder Scrolls Online because it's worth trying.
Absolutely.
Without a doubt.
Absolutely.
But
it is.
I find that it doesn't really capture me constantly because I'm a big fan of old school RPGs. A big fan. I mean, I'm playing old school RuneScape right now. I love old school RPGs, and I feel that the level scaling for basically everything in ESO kind of makes the whole world feel somewhat flat. I like the experience when I'm playing an RPG and I find an enemy that I can't kill because they're super high level, or I find stuff that I can grind, and like Baldur's Gate. Baldur's Gate, the old RPG on PC, one of my favorite games of all time. I love the fact that you can go and kill the Ankegs in Baldur's Gate from pretty much the start. They'll kill you, but you can try, and that's what I very much enjoy about the game. I enjoy being given the ability to try and fail, and I do just think that the Elder Scrolls Online feels very flat.
He's not wrong. So back in the day, what used to happen is that they had level-based zones, and then they had the One Tamriel update. The problem is that, like, before the One Tamriel update, if you didn't do all of the quests in an area, you would be severely underleveled, and if you were underleveled, you would just die. And there was same thing it was the case with the Rothgar DLC, in the Imperial City DLC. You know, if you didn't have, like, back in the day, they had a previous system called Veteran, you know, levels, and there were 16 vet levels, and you in the vet levels were essentially just a thing that, like, basically gave you more power as you leveled them up. And what ended up happening is essentially, you know, they got rid of it because when you know, they released 2 DLC and nobody could play it. You know, nobody was able to go play it because you had to be max level to do it. Because yes, they ranked you up to the max level, but you still got fucking creamed. It really, really sucked. And I wasn't able to even play Rothgar or the Imperial City until the 1 Tamriel update. It was just patently unfun, and, you know, it definitely was not an enjoyable experience. And so what ended up happening was they released the 1 Tamriel update. They made it so you could go anywhere, and you didn't have to beat the game to go to the other provinces, because they were still the game was still very xenophobic in the original sort of Alliance War kind of thing. Like, the Alliance War has become kind of a footnote over the years. In the beginning, it was less so. It was a genuinely important thing. And now it's kind of a case of where, you know, like back then, like, you had to, like, go through the entire storyline of the Ebonheart Pact if you started an EP like I did, and then you went and did the entirety of the Daggerfall Covenant, and then you did the entirety of the Aldmeri Dominion, and you got your Cadwell Silver and Cadwell Gold, and you got the Imperial style book for doing your silver, and you got the Cadwell, the funny little jester man from Cold Harbor's hat, for finishing gold. And, you know, you didn't really get to see any of the other provinces until you did that, or you knew somebody who could teleport you over there. I didn't, so I didn't get to go to those places until that point. Unfortunately, as cool as that might be, you know, it does kind of lead us to the unfortunate reality that it leads to the unfortunate fact that, like, a lot of people wouldn't get to play through a bunch of it. And when they in the lead up to their first chapter expansion, Morrowind, they released 1 Tamriel. And what did 1 Tamriel do? It basically made it so if you went anywhere in the world that was slated for, like, overworld single-player game, you could just go there and experience it. And that was awesome. With the exception of the fact that you kind of were, you know, like you the higher level players now were kind of just like gods, you know, like when the content didn't feel as difficult anymore once you hit the max level. Granted, in an MMO like Elder Scrolls Online, most people aren't going to hit max level, and and honestly, I'm perfectly okay with that reality. It still kind of sucked, though, a little bit. I would have liked it to have not been that way, but say Livy, what can you do? But yeah, the combat still is just like, I like it and I hate it. Like, the combat's good and bad. It's fun, but it's not, and it's also kind of shenanigy. It's all over the place. Let's just to be honest. But yeah.
Not that it's not worth your time. It's definitely worth your time.
It absolutely is. Like, he's right where he says it's like feels like a Bethesda game. It's not like a true Bethesda game, but it's like there's content, stories galore. You can pick it up for $20 and have a great time. It's wonderful. But, like, it is, you like it or you don't. It's one of those things.
But it hasn't managed to enthrall or capture me for a long time. In fact, the few games that have are old school RuneScape, RuneScape 3 to a lesser extent.
Well, that's because Josh Strife Hayes is also a boomer. My buddy Ty, on the other hand, he's closer to our generation. He likes playing Final Fantasy XIV. A lot, actually. And he's kind of said the same thing. It's like, he doesn't really know why he doesn't like Elder Scrolls Online. He likes action combat. He hates tab targeting. It's just there's just something about ESO that rubs him the wrong way. I would wager it's mainly because of the toxic nature of the RP community that he was a part of, but that's neither here nor there.
And Final Fantasy XIV, and as much as I enjoy World of Warcraft, I am not always the biggest fan of raiding or dungeons. I'd like there to be variety, and I feel that while World of Warcraft does raiding and dungeons better than pretty much any other game, apart from maybe FF14, there's not enough variety in WoW to keep me around life skilling-wise. Do you not enjoy trying to join a Mythic Plus group for an hour? Well, let's be real. If I was playing World of Warcraft, I'm pretty sure I could probably find somebody to carry me. You know, that's what I'm doing here.
Yeah, that's about right. Yeah, and that's kind of the big thing. It's like Elder Scrolls Online is a really, really great game. It's for $20. It's definitely worth the money spent. Absolutely, but I get it. It's hard. It's absolutely hard, and it's not easy. Yeah, but so that's it. How many cards do I want to banish? Sure, I'll banish 6. Let's get that deep cut. One of you. One of you. One of you. I'm not yet. Ooh. Cool. Cute. Love that. Fun. Yep. There we go. Fade effect. Piercing battle damage for the win. Set that. That's for the battle phase. Just chip over. And turn. Let's throw something else on, shall we? Sorry I'm not super chatty, y'all. I am just here. I am just a guy. A guy that is existing. Yeah. Can't use that effect right now. Shame. Activate its effect. Get something to hand. Gotta love the Attribute Festival, am I right? I feel like shit. I'll go second. I'm turning these lights off. I'm losing. I feel like I want to pass out. I don't give a shit.
This video is sponsored by Masterworks. We've all heard of the dangers of nuclear power, the risk of meltdown, invisible but deadly radiation, memories of Chernobyl and Fukushima, an issue so pervasive it birthed the Grünen, the Green Party, one of Germany's largest political forces, with Green parties in general being staunchly anti-nuclear. Following the Russian invasion of Ukraine and the energy crisis, however, these positions have been increasingly questioned. The two disasters, indeed the two disasters most often brought up by anti-nuclear activists, are Chernobyl and Fukushima. These two precedents are used to paint a picture of the danger nuclear power plants pose. However, when looking at the facts, those concerns seem, if nothing else, exaggerated. Alarmist even. Or do they? Is there merit to the criticism, and where does that put nuclear power in the middle of the energy crisis? About that, power costs have been hitting historic highs. As a result, we've seen a flurry of government action to try and rein things in. Now, normally, people's income from passive investments would help ease the pain of higher cost of living. But unfortunately, Goldman Sachs reports that a typical stock-heavy portfolio is expected to flatline at best this year. And so what do you do when inflation is making your savings a bad place to keep money as well? You could put your investments outside the stock market. No, not a safe or a pillow. I'm talking real assets like fine art. According to Deloitte, 85% of wealth managers believe there's an argument for art as part of a wealth offering. Even Morgan Stanley specifically talks about fine art, saying, investment-grade art has a low correlation to other major asset classes and often experiences lower price volatility. Only can it compares through CNBC still in turmoil. And now, back to the video. So,
my brother in Christ, I love you, Adam something. But it was a 2-minute in a 10-minute video ad segment. That's unfucking acceptable. I love your videos and your basic shit, but fuck that.
The two examples cited by opponents of nuclear. Let's take a look at Chernobyl first. What happened there? First off, no, the exclusion zone is not Stalker, there aren't any gigantic mutated animals or wondrous radioactive anomalies. The zone is in fact one of the best wildlife sanctuaries on the planet. There are wild horses, foxes, a whole lot of animals happily living in the area. Until the Russians arrived anyway. And the zone itself was at no point abandoned, not even the nuclear power plant. After Block 4 exploded in 1986, Block 2 went on operating till 1991, Block 1 till 1996, and Block 3 all the way till 2000. But what about the radiation? To answer this question, I went and asked Thunderfoot, a PhD researcher and fellow YouTuber. He said, radiation around Chernobyl is comparable to what you get on an airplane at altitude. The plane is more dangerous though due to the whole body dose. Most of the remaining Chernobyl radiation is cesium-137. Cesium in the environment isn't a great danger unless you eat it. So there you have it. Chernobyl is generally safe unless you go around eating the local soil and flora. Just 36 years after the world's worst nuclear catastrophe. And this is where the alarmism, sensationalism, and people's general lack of physics knowledge intersect. Photos like this might look scary to the average Joe. Oh, what's this? A Chernobyl mushroom with one of them Genghis counters next to it. 21.88? That sounds mighty high, whatever that is. Nuclear power's bad. That picture is from Pripyat, the city right next to the power plant. The display shows 21.88 microsieverts, which equals 0.02 millisieverts, which is about 1/4 of the dosage you get on a transatlantic flight, which is 0.08. For the sake of perspective, a likely lethal dose would be 5,000 millisieverts, 65,500 times the radiation on transatlantic flights, and 250,000 times that of a Pripyat mushroom. It's not so scary when you put it that way, is it? The destruction of Chernobyl Block 4 itself is also a special case which nowadays case couldn't happen in any developed country. Very briefly, the Chernobyl plant was running Soviet RBMK-1000 reactors, which were cheap and easy to build and maintain, but this also entailed design flaws which were only corrected after the disaster. Basically, the thing was very peculiar, and in order to avoid a runaway thermal feedback loop and potentially a catastrophe, you need reliable equipment and highly trained personnel. Neither of this was present in Chernobyl. On top of that, the Russian Empire, back then calling itself the Soviet Union, has always been notorious for cheaping out and suppressing inconvenient truths such as fatal design flaws in their nuclear reactors, or more recently the actual state of the Russian armed forces. Ever since then, all remaining RBMK reactors have been retrofitted, meaning right now there isn't a single nuclear power plant on the planet which is able to explode like Chernobyl Reactor 4. Fair enough, but what about Fukushima then? Let's talk about that. The year is 2011. It's the 11th of March, quarter to 15. In 1 minute, the Tohoku earthquake would begin, just 72 kilometers off the coast, lasting for about 6 minutes. The good news is, it didn't happen right under the land. The bad news is, it was a magnitude 9 earthquake, the absolute top of the Richter scale. As it was underwater, it set off an enormous tsunami. Now, the nuclear power plant was right on the coast, but behind wave barriers. And right up to the tsunami, things were in order. Of the 6 reactors, only 3 were operating. The other 3 were shut down for inspections. When the earthquake hit, the 3 operational reactors shut down correctly as intended. However, coolant has to be circulated even after a shutdown, otherwise things can heat up and the reactor can melt down. Since the reactors no longer produced electricity, emergency diesel generators started running the coolant pumps. However, then the tsunami arrived, so large that it broke through the wave barriers and flooded the plant's basement, where those generators were located. All generators failed with the exception of reactor 6's, providing enough power to cool both 5 and 6. The first 4, however, were left without coolant and melted down. There were also some hydrogen explosions, so if you see damage on the plant's buildings, it was that. Now you might be asking, how on earth did they not think of the tsunami risk in Japan of all places, with a coastal nuclear power plant of all things? Why did they put the generators in the basement, and how come they didn't know that wave barriers were insufficient for a large tsunami? And the answer is, they did know. The company operating the plant, TEPCO, has received warnings about the tsunami risk from the US Nuclear Regulatory Commission, various Japanese government committees, the Japanese Active Fault and Earthquake Research Center, and 2 separate in-house studies by TEPCO itself. They all came to the same conclusion. If there is a large enough tsunami, the plant's existing defenses will be wholly insufficient, resulting in a disaster. And TEPCO took all these studies and warnings and simply ignored them.
Yep. Greedy businessman.
If anything, this disaster has shown us how safe nuclear power plants really are, even in such an extreme environment. Since without decades of gross negligence and lack of oversight, the plant would have been fine even during a magnitude 9 earthquake and an enormous tsunami. The earthquake and tsunami killed 19,759, injured 6,242, with 2,553 missing. So how many people died due to the Fukushima nuclear disaster? 1. Yeah. And if you look at the plant on a map, you'll see that the area around it is very much inhabited. People still live there. There's even a 7-Eleven just 1.5 kilometers away from the actual reactor blocks. As you can see, when you actually look at the facts, nuclear power, even nuclear disasters, are suddenly a lot less scary. However, this didn't stop Germany, for example, from trying to phase out its nuclear production from 2011 onwards, which resulted in the country's increasing dependence on Russian hydrocarbons, which ended up financing the imperialistic, genocidal conquest of Ukraine. There was a parallel attempt at the so-called Energiewende, a large-scale shift towards green energy sources, but that initiative is now mired in German bureaucracy with no solution in sight. Thus, in order to plug the hole left by the nuclear phase-out, Germany had to resort to lignite, the dirtiest, most polluting, lowest quality type of coal there is. In addition, lignite is mined via open pit mining, turning the environment into an actual wasteland for multiple square kilometers. So there we go. We turned entire regions into wastelands to burn the worst possible fossil fuel just so we can shut down those scary nuclear power plants. Meanwhile, in France, nuclear power constitutes 3/4 of the energy mix, with 6 new reactors planned in the next 15 years. Poland has also opted for nuclear to replace their notoriously polluting coal power plants. And good for them. There is nothing really wrong with nuclear, and opposition thereof originates either from a lack of knowledge or deliberate spread of sensationalist misinformation. You know, it's easy to report cesium levels exceeding the norm 100 million times when the norm is 0. And regarding nuclear waste storage, it's a pain in the ass, complicated and expensive, but by no means unsolvable, and vastly preferable to dying from the climate catastrophe. Plus, turns out the Chernobyl zone is perfect for large-scale nuclear waste storage.
So I just want to say on the note of like the nuclear waste storage, it's actually I'm not saying he downplayed it there, but it is an important thing I just want to note. We don't really have a waste solution. We actually have a mountain in, I think, Nevada that we want to bury it all under, and it would basically solve our nuclear issues for like the next decade. like few decades, really, because of like how of it being built. But the problem is that the senators and House members from there lobby so hard against it because, you know, they don't want, like, nobody wants to have the state that has like the nuclear waste and stuff. It looks bad on like it's just pure politics, you know. So, you know, it's and there's also the question of how do you, you know, leave messaging for people decades from now. You know, like you leave messages for people thousands of years from now when language has changed, when the symbol of a skull and crossbones like may not mean don't come in here at all. It might just mean danger lives here, be careful. Like, who knows, you know. So the storage problem is absolutely an issue, but every other point he made is perfectly fine. Like, it is vastly preferable to having to deal with weight like nuclear waste 200 years from now is preferable to, you know, having my home city put underwater by the year 2069 or some shit.
Such a facility having been inaugurated a few months before the invasion. Nuclear energy should be the basis of every modern energy mix. It should be used as a stable backbone with renewable energy stacked on top. This is the surest, most effective way of getting rid of fossil fuels and achieving carbon neutrality in the energy sector. And if you still
that is right.
think nuclear plants are too risky, well, global warming is far riskier, so take your pick. Thank you for watching. This was my video about nuclear power. If you like my content, please...
Why did you have 2 fucking minutes of it for an ad? It's fucking wild. Let's see. What we got? Ronnie has a slumber party? What the fuck? I can't. I emotionally cannot do that right now. Stewart interviews George Carlin. Oh, that looks cool. Wait, that's probably gonna get me DMCA'd because it's fucking TV from the 90s. Oh my god, is that virtual? Is that fucking Shen Shen? Jesus Christ, a throwback. Ugh.
Well, howdy there, Internet people. It's Bo again. So today we are going to talk about a question that came in a bunch of different times about different issues. But at its heart, it's the same question. And it has a very, very simple answer. It's just counterintuitive when you're first looking at it. So we'll go through that today. And the question at its heart is, why is the Republican Party pursuing losing positions? Like, why are they taking a losing position on issues and just doubling down on it?
Yeah, I wonder why.
And the question came in relationship to a whole bunch of different things. The most common was reproductive rights. So we'll just roll with that. But rest assured, if you sent in a message that has that core question, you know, why are Republicans doubling down on this horrible position that polls poorly and they've already suffered backlash from, this applies to you too. It applies to your question. Republicans are doubling down on a bunch of losing positions. But which Republicans? Is it McCarthy and McConnell? No, right? In fact, federal level Republicans, they've been super quiet. Even with the position the House is in, they're not pushing through anything. It's weird. It's because they know they're losing positions. They don't want to double down on them. So they're just kind of riding things out, trying not to make too many waves, engaging in grievance stuff and culture war stuff, but not pursuing policy because they know they have losing policy. They don't want to drive negative voter turnout, which is where people show up not to vote for the Democratic candidate, but to vote against them. And if they pursue more restrictions on reproductive rights at the federal level, they will generate that. And they know it. That's how they wound up with unlikely voters during the midterms. So they're being really quiet. It's not all of the Republican Party that's doing this. It's the state level. And which states? It's either states that are genuinely red, like they are just red states, where people would kind of support this. Or they are states that are successfully gerrymandered. One of the two. That's where this is happening. That's where you see Republicans doubling down on losing positions. Because in their district, it's not a losing position. It'll get them reelected. And they're just kind of like, well, I can secure my spot at the state level. Those federal reps, yeah, they can worry about themselves. And that's what's happening. The state level Republican Party is putting the federal level Republican Party in jeopardy by continuing to push this stuff. And generally, they think they're safe. The state level reps, they believe they're safe. I don't know that that's true, though. In the red areas, yeah, those that are legitimately red, sure. In the areas that are gerrymandered, not so much. Because when those districts get drawn up, they're drawn up based on normal voter turnout. If negative voter turnout is driven and a whole bunch of people show up just with the goal of ousting Republicans, particularly ousting them at the federal level because that's what draws most people in, they're not going to vote for the Republican at the state level. So they may actually end up paying for this themselves, even though right now they don't think they will. But generally speaking, when you are looking at this weird situation that is developing, where polling is just very lopsided, it is landslide territory, and the Republicans are still pursuing something that they know is a losing position, that's why. In their very narrow district or in their particular state, it's a winning position there. So they're pursuing it and putting the rest of the Republican Party in jeopardy. I think if they continue, they actually will end up driving so much negative voter turnout that you will see districts that are successfully gerrymandered flip. Because it is when those districts are drawn up, they are based on normal voter turnout. If 10% extra of the Democratic Party shows up, it's not gerrymandered anymore. Because they're normally designed to look somewhat competitive. They're really not. But they're designed to look that way. If the Democratic Party has higher than expected turnout and the Republican Party doesn't because, well, they feel pretty safe, those unlikely voters, it's a good possibility that those gerrymandered districts get flipped, at least a few of them. So that's why this is happening. It's not a party-wide thing. In fact, I'm sure those at the federal level are probably calling home to state reps and to the state party, like, y'all have to stop. But they're not going to listen to them because they are in their own social media echo chamber. They're in that situation. The state reps are just listening to the people in their districts and the most vocal in their districts. And they just see a method that they perceive to be a surefire way to stay in office. And, all of them want what every first-term administration wants. another term. Anyway, it's just a thought. Y'all have a good day.
Ooh, Vermilion Dragon Mech. Interesting.